Hi, and welcome back to the Mob Mentality Show. I'm Chris Lucian, and my co-host is Austin Chadwick. And today we're going to talk about something Austin's very passionate about, risk it for the biscuit, in quotes. And so this is kind of like a mob psychology thing a little bit about taking risks. So Austin, what are your thoughts? And maybe we can get started from there.
Yeah. So this episode comes out of some recent experiences where ensembling or mobbing with the team. And we come across a few problems. And in the world of like continuous improvement, there's always the 1% gains every day, right? You're always making a little bit better. Maybe the scout rule, leaving it a little bit better than you found it, and that's fantastic. And I feel like that's kind of like my my go-to, my normal mode. And so we were doing that. We were encountering some code and some pipelines, and we were making it a little bit better. And then so it's basically two more experienced person in the mob and then one person less experienced. And what was funny, we were doing that for a while, and then all of a sudden less experienced person just said, well, why not just go from here to here, like all the way, like just make this humongous change and improvement. And what was funny is it turned out to be this really healthy discussion and dynamic and outcome, because we, at first, the first emotion reaction is like, whoa, that's too risky, that's too big. But then it was like, well, this person has some really good reasons why we could just change the system to make this big improvement. And so what was really cool to see is that we didn't shoot down the idea, and we explored it, and we started to run some experiments. And I think maybe another title for this discussion here would be taking risks safely. So what someone came into an idea and said, let's do this big thing or this big improvement. And what the rest of the mob did was take that idea and say like, whoa, how can we take this really cool idea and make it safe? So like taking risks safely, so to speak. And so what happened was, instead of making a big risky change, we turned it into a series of maybe smaller experiments that led us to make a bigger experiment. But we had it with, let's say, guardrails, or I remember a Joshua Karievsky video where he talked about when they were building, what's the bridge in San Francisco? Golden Gate Bridge. Where they had the net, you know what I mean? And so that net, when they were building it, gave them safety to take a bigger risk in how they were building it, so to speak. And so so we basically built these nets. We ran some experiments, and I think what we did, and this was kind of more in the CI/CD, continuous delivery mode of improvements, we jumped several of our apps from kind of like where they were into almost full continuous delivery mode, because this one person in the mob was suggesting that we could go for it. And what was funny is he used the phrase "risk it for the biscuits." That's been like the meme of our mob for a while since then. Is like, oh, we got to risk it for the biscuit now, So I don't know. Have you had any similar experiences, Chris?
Yeah, well, you kind of remind me of a couple of things. So like one is just breaking something large into multiple pieces as like being a developed skill, and so like that, I was just thinking about that in general, right? Because I know that there's a lot of great stuff that we can do, but a lot of it has to become incremental. And I see a lot of teams like get kind of spun around the axle on some like large refactoring that they really want to do, and so that's pretty interesting. That also reminds me of kind of the redundant till replace, which I heard from Michael Feathers, and basically kind of creating two simultaneous systems to make something large incremental as well. I don't know, it's probably not what you'd done in that situation, but also some of those kind of I guess aha moments around like, hey, this architectural change would be a huge benefit to the whole system, and we should really go ahead and get it done. And like organizational fear or just fear from like a group also is pretty interesting. So all of those I think I've experienced in a variety of ways, and sometimes it's like a side project, or sometimes it's the mob getting together and hammering it out. And so I just think that there's a lot of depth to what you're talking about there, especially with and I think that skill of breaking something large into little pieces does create like a big safety net around everything, because I do see, pretty often it's like, oh, that's like a massive, mind-blowing change or something, and it can be very risky, right?
Yeah, and I think if I reflect on previous mob experiences, I've been hearing about this yes and kind of mindset for a while when you're having the conversation in the ensemble about what to do. And I think I've been giving a pretty good effort for a while, but I reflect on past experiences where someone suggested something that was legitimately very risky. You know what I mean? Like there's a way to run an experiment where we could potentially break lots of things in production. You know what I mean? It could have this big benefit, but there's like serious risk there. And I think it wasn't wrong of me to express those concerns and basically make the experiment not happen. But what I think, if I could talk to my old self, time travel back to my old self, is have we explored other ways to yes and this, right? Like, yes, we can run this experiment, but let's do it over here. I remember I was talking to someone else who's doing coaching in a mob, and he said, what I do a lot with inexperienced people is let them run their experiments and learn, but limit the blast radius. And so I feel like in the past, I didn't try and brainstorm enough on to find a way to take someone's idea and let's try that, because we're going to learn a lot from this. And if it works, wow, what an incredible big leap. But to really like, okay, what about this? What about this? What about this? And it might take 3 or 4 different brainstorming, back and forths to find a way to try the idea without it breaking stuff, right? And so in this case I was thinking of, my first thought was like, that's too risky. But then as the more and more we discussed, we found ways to run it in a way that was safe. Then we knew it was worked, and then we did it for real, like in the real system. And so, and there's one thing I want to mention that you had an impact on this, and this kind of goes to kind of a leadership meta level, stepping back away from the mob, is I believe part of it was some things you said. So for those who don't know, Chris is in the more of a leadership position in our organization. And so he'll pop into mobs, help out with something here and there, and then pop out or be part of a lean coffee discussion. And I think what's funny is I'm thinking about now, before we did these big improvements that have been fantastic and, reaping benefits for us, I think I go back to a discussion you had with this particular team about a month ago, where you said, why not just do X? And we were just like, whoa, that's a little bit much. But I think that seed was planted in one of our ensemblers, and then it came out a month later. And so so I don't know if there's some method to your madness there, Mr. Chris, for dropping in little nuggets like that. But
yeah, I mean, so a lot of it, I do find that at times, like suggesting something so far outside the realm of like what is immediately available can spark creativity. So I don't know, I don't know exactly what I might have said or why, but I'll just say that, like, sometimes I think there's a book on innovation. I can't remember exactly the name of it right now, but it talks about different types of innovators, and one of them is merging 2 very different ideas into an innovation. And so sometimes I'll just be like, okay, well, there's this like other technology over here that is completely unrelated but has a similar application in practice, and then or just thinking about something that's maybe the team feels locked into a technology, and sometimes just suggesting something totally like outside will at least spark a critical response, like so maybe we made a bunch of architectural decisions like years and years ago, and like how can we get people out of like this mentality of like, this is the way it's always been, and so often I'll be like, okay, why don't we just create a microservice, connect it to a service bus, and then use this completely other technology out here? and and you can see people going like, whoa, like why would anybody suggest that? But then, you know, it does get people kind of like turning on it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, you know, I don't know that I do that intentionally so much as like that might be a little bit of a personality trait, is to I'm a big fan of chaos, if people don't know, you know, and so you know, when I play Dungeons and Dragons, all my characters are just random, you know, in the sense that I roll a dice to make every decision ever, even, and so a lot of the times randomness helps in I guess in my mind as a way to kind of test the boundaries of things, and so a little, there's a little bit of that going on too.
Yeah, and I think the positive impact of that is not always immediately seen. And I know at times, like I've probably given resistance to you, you know, you come in and we're like on this train and we're making these 1% improvements, and all of a sudden you show up and you're like, hey, why not way over here? And I'm like, whoa, you know. And so it's kind of like a similar yes and situation where it's like that would totally derail, like, you know, what we got going on right now. And even if we don't go to it immediately, you're right, it does spark brainstorming and conversations and creativity, and where people's eyes are open to it, maybe even if it doesn't happen now, but like, oh, now I see the road to there, and then we can make the jump, you know. And so
or it's you have a good reason not to, so sometimes it's like, it's like, no, that's ridiculous, and this is why. And I'm like, okay, great. Like so, and my understanding goes way up, because I'm like, oh, okay, so but I think just as often as that happens, I also see the like, oh, like I never even considered it, because it was like, you know, I had my a little bit of tunnel vision going into it, and both scenarios are really great outcomes, because, you know, so one is I get a huge amount of learning, and I understand that that person like has a solidified context around, you know, what they're doing, and it's almost like a spot check. It's chaos engineering for the like doing it like we always did scenario, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's healthy, right? Because emotionally, and it kind of well-being at work is I can become very content just being like, oh, isn't that amazing? Look at that 1% gain yesterday. Where some people that can become more boring, right? And so to have someone be a disruptor and push, you know, kind of to risk it, right, for the biscuit kind of thing, I think is a really healthy role to have in a team or a mob or a leader, you know, so to come in and push to the next level. So all right on. Well, I think let's wrap that one up. So do you have any stories out there, audience, on times and places where someone in your team, organization really made an extreme suggestion, helped push it to the next level? And what was that like for you? When have you seen it well? When have you not seen it go well? Maybe taking risks without a safety net. What safety nets have worked well for you? We love to hear your comments, feedback on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and all the things. And until next time, mob well, everyone, and have a good one. Bye.
Bye, everybody.